Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's Morbid makeup video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all this that's going on today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the truly horrific murder of 33-year-old Jessica Padgett. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And you can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They're all BRATTERSTEIN, but no pressure. So guess what, guys? I am officially a brand ambassador for Ana Luisa Jewelry, and this video is in partnership with Ana Luisa Jewelry. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Ana Luisa Jewelry, which you should not be because I wear their stuff all the time. You guys see, if you check the description box, I wear their stuff all the time and I have for years. But if you're unfamiliar, you're about to get familiar. Ana Luisa Jewelry is a jewelry brand, that is able to craft high quality jewelry pieces at very affordable prices. And I don't know how they're able to do it, but they're able to make products that are this nice at this low of a price and somehow still keep the planet in mind by remaining a carbon neutral company. I don't know how they do it. And the best part, as if that wasn't already the best part, is that their jewelry is so pretty, dude. And they have like a variety of different styles. If you're like a classy human being and you want to keep it real sophisticated looking, they have something for you. Or if you want to, you know, jazz it up a little bit, add a little bit of spice, they have something for you there as well. Now, I got 4 different pairs of earrings, not 8, 4 different pairs of earrings that I want to share with you today. And oh my God. First, the very first pair is the one that I'm wearing on my ear right now. These little danglies that come with, this is their little, their mate. Not an evil twin, but just like the other. Anyways, these are the Hannah Lees, and I had no idea when I got these ones that these were gonna be my favorite. But they are, and I've worn them several times before filming this video because I just needed to wear them in my day-to-day life because they're just like the perfect everyday earring for me. I am obsessed. Okay, this next pair is called Duo, and I don't know what it is about these. I didn't know I'd like these as much as I do. These are my top 2 favorite out of the 4 that I have, but these are called Duo, and I just like love them. They're so simple. So you get like the hoop, but then you get like a second hoop. My husband says that they look like donuts, and he's a big fan because of that. Men are strange, but I just feel like these are so pretty and they go really good with the, I got the little C earrings, remember? Maybe you don't. I said I was going to get these from Ana Luisa for Mother's Day for my son's name and my husband's name, and I did, and they look really, really cute next to the Duo. Okay, this next pair I have is called just Paris, and I think these, out of every pair that I have, are probably the ones I would guess, I don't know, obviously, but I would guess these are like the best seller because I feel like this is the type of pair that literally any person could wear, from like me, a 33-year-old lady, to like my mom or my little sister. I just feel like this is the type of pair that just anybody could wear. And that rhymed. I didn't mean it to, but they're just like really pretty and simple. They're light. They look like they'd be heavy. I mean, they're not like cheap light because like they use good materials. They have a little weight to them, but there's not so much weight that you would be like, you know, noticing them a lot. They're just like really, really, they make a statement without making too much of a statement. Like the next pair I'm going to put on makes a little bit more of a statement, but like a good statement. Okay, and the last pair I have to share with you today are the Ashley Doubled, and see what I mean? How these just make a little bit more of a statement. First off, you will hear me coming, which I like make your presence known, but also they're just like very unique. I have a pair from Ana Luisa, I think they're called the Rocks Small, that look just like this. It's just this piece, but having the little extra dangle just adds a little, I don't know, just this little something extra. Adds a little spice to my life, okay? So, if you love sustainable jewelry at affordable prices with their jewelry starting as low as $39, I absolutely suggest that you give Ana Luisa a little look-see. If you click the link in my description box and use the code BRATTERSTEIN10 at checkout, you can get 10% off your new favorite jewelry piece today. So now that I'm done spreading the good word of Ana Luisa Jewelry, we can go ahead and get into this video. And now this video is a special one. They're all special. Every victim is special. But this one is unique. It is a subscriber suggestion. But what makes it unique is that the subscriber who suggested it, her name was Nicole. Hi, Nicole. Thank you, Nicole, for the nightmares. She has a unique connection to the case as she is acquainted with the victim and people in the victim's life. She is acquainted with Jessica, the victim, Jessica's best friend, and she also went to kindergarten with Jessica's husband. Apparently this is just like a really small town area. The area where Jessica was killed is called Allen Township, and in 2018, which is just a couple of years after this took place, the population was like less than 5,000. So we get it, small town, everyone knows everybody. Thanks, Brittany. Cool. But anyways, when Nicole brought this case to my attention, I had never heard of it before, and as I started to look into it, I was mind blown. It is truly, this case is so fucked up, and I know that like every case we cover is like very fucked up, but something about this one, I feel like this is going to give people like a visceral reaction, and for like the teeny tiniest of synopsises, this case may or may not involve a necrophile. So today I'm going to tell you the whole story, and while I do, I'm going to be putting on a full face of makeup, hence the makeup in Morbid makeup. Now, if that's not really your thing, that's cool. Thanks for hanging out this long. I hope you find a channel that you prefer, but if you're on the fence, you're not sure how you feel, maybe stick around. I think you could be surprised by how much you like it and also me. And if you're ever curious as to what I'm using, it's always linked down below for your convenience. Now, with all of that said, come, gather around and let me tell you the story of the horrific murder of 33-year-old Jessica Padgett. So, November 21st, 2014 started as a totally normal day for the Padgett family. Jessica Padgett, the woman we're going to be discussing today, got up, got out of bed, got her 3 kids up, and started getting ready for the day. She took her 2 older kids and she dropped them off at school, presumably. Yeah, school. That's what kids do. And then she headed off to her job at the Duck Duck Goose Child Care Center, which, how adorable is that name? I cannot. How cute is that? And she went with her youngest child because it's a child care center. And this was a small child. I believe he was 2 years old. So she gets there. She takes him to his classroom. She tells him that she loves him. She gives him his hugs. She says for him to give her tisses. She said tisses, which is adorable. And then she went off to go do her work for the day. A woman named Jamie, who was later interviewed, whose daughter went to the same childcare center and was in the same class as her son, said of Jessica, and I quote, "What a good mom she was. You could tell what a loving mother she was." So midday during Jessica's lunch break, she decided that she was going to leave work for a quick little errand. She was going to run to the home of her mother Danielle and her stepfather Gregory at 451 Covered Bridge Road, which was just about a 10-minute drive from the child care center. And she was going because she needed to fax some paperwork, because apparently older folks do be having fax machines or something. No, they had a fax machine because they actually ran a business, I believe, from their home, and it was called Distinctive Fencing. And they had this fax machine for business purposes. So Jessica leaves to go run this errand. This quick errand is literally 10 minutes up the road, and never came back again. Jessica Padgett was born December 15th, 1980 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and was born to parents Thomas and Danielle. When Jessica was growing up, she was close with her family, her cousins. She would go with her family to her grandparents' house and play football on the street with the boys because she was just a tough little thing. She was also a sweet little nurturer, having a Cabbage Patch doll named Sarah that she carried with her everywhere. And apparently she loved this doll, dude. Her cousin said that she and her cousin would actually walk to like the corner store to buy food to feed this little Cabbage Patch doll named Sarah, which is like super precious. Jessica was described as a bright soul. She was described as a happy woman who was always smiling, the type of person who was really funny, and the type of person who would literally never be able to hold a grudge. She was the type of person who would get mad at you and then very quickly get over it. She was also the type of person who was very welcoming and very accepting of new people in her life. Her cousin's fiance said that when he started coming around into the family, she was the first one to be like, "Come in here, give me a hug, my dude, like you are family." She was that person that just made everyone feel like they were at home. Jessica went to Whitefall High School, where she graduated in 1998, and then went on to take early childhood education classes at the Lehigh County Community College. And she took this knowledge and got herself that job at the Duck Duck Goose Child Care Center, where she worked for the last 2 years prior to her going missing. And this was such a sweet gig for her because she was actually able to take her youngest to work with her, which is like the ideal, right? Because you don't trust anybody else with your kids, but like people need to be working, right? So being able to have access to childcare because you do be working in childcare is just, I can't even imagine how amazing that would be. As I said, Jessica was a mother of 3, and by all accounts, she was just like a wonderful, loving, and dedicated mother. She was the type of mom who would never miss any of her kids' baseball games, softball games, things like that. And those who knew her said it was very clear that she was like in love with her kids. And I guess like, cause she was newly married, which is really sad. Like her and her husband had only been married a few months when she went missing. And I guess when they were going to go on their honeymoon, she was having a lot of trouble like leaving her kids, and she just kept going back. Like they're like, we gotta go, try to walk away, and she kept going back to give them more kisses because she was having such a hard time with the idea of leaving them. So speaking of married, Jessica was married to her husband. Duh, married husband. Okay, cool, we get it. And his name was Michael, but he goes by Micah, I believe, because I hear him called both depending on what like reporting you're looking at. And the two had been recently married. Oh my gosh, I need to learn to breathe when I'm speaking, but it's like I hold my breath when I take long sentences and then I try to recover after. Anyways, Jessica and Micah had a really good relationship, and though they had just gotten married just a couple of months before she went missing, they had actually been together for 8 years and they were like very in love. So with Jessica having her dream job that she literally went to school to get, right? So she has a job that she loves where she can take her kid to school with her, to work with her, not school. Maybe it's a school. I guess they probably do be learning, but you know what I mean. Having a job that she loves, where she can actually take her kid to school, having her 3 kids that she loves, and being newly married, she literally had everything going for her. Like she had a really wonderful life. So when she went missing that day in November, it made no sense. Her sister said of this later, and I quote, "She wouldn't just not go back to work. They're not sure if she was taken, if she left on her own, or if she knew the person. There wasn't a sign of a struggle, so we're not sure what happened." So back to that fateful day in November. Jessica decides she's going to go send this fax. She tells her coworkers like, hey, it's my lunch break. I'm about to run over. I'll be right back. No big deal. So she leaves. She goes to go do this errand. And after an hour of her being gone, that's when her coworkers are like, huh, that's odd. Where's Jessica? Because she's only supposed to have a half-hour lunch. So her being gone an hour was very, one, it would be rude, like if that was something that she just did, but it wasn't something she just did. So it definitely made them like raise their eyebrows. So they kind of wait around like maybe something happened. Let's give her a little bit of time. But after 2 hours, when she hadn't returned, this is when they're like, okay, maybe we need to do something about this. So this is when, after Jessica had been missing for 2 hours, her husband, Micah, gets a phone call from the daycare center with like some news that would definitely freak me out. And that's the daycare center calling him to be like, hey, Jessica left to run an errand that should have taken like 20 minutes and she's been gone 2 hours and she hasn't hit anybody up. And clearly she was planning on coming back because she left her kid here. Can you imagine getting that phone call? Can you imagine you're sitting there at work? Well, you're probably working. You're at work, just chilling, not killing. When you get this phone call saying that your wife has been missing and just left your kid, I would be losing my fucking shit, but apparently he was able to keep it together at least for a little bit. He tells her coworkers not to worry, that he will try to call her himself. And he says that he tries to do that. He tries to get a hold of her and isn't able to. So this is when he calls her mom, because remember, her mom Danielle is where she was headed. She was headed to her mom's house to send these faxes. So he calls her and he finds out at this point that her mom actually isn't even home. She was in Florida, because remember this takes place in Pennsylvania. She was in Florida working on, I guess her and her husband were buying a house in Florida. So she was working on some finishing touches on that home. So he calls her and he tells her what's going on. And she's like, oh, that's very, very odd. Because Jessica, again, wasn't the type of person like not to have her phone on her, like for her not to be answering calls. She wasn't the type to do that, especially because of their kids. So echoing Micah's, worry, she's like, okay, here's what you need to do. Go ahead, call Greg, see if Greg's heard from her, because Greg actually is still home. He didn't come with me to Florida, and see if he's heard from her, and we'll figure this out, essentially. So he does just that. He calls Greg. He asks Greg, like, yo, have you heard from Jessica? Have you seen Jessica? And he says, just like his wife, he hasn't seen her. He hasn't heard from her. So it's at this point that everyone starts to freak out. I guess Jessica's mom was like losing her shit because she's away in Florida. Like there's not much she can do in another state. And she said that she felt like if she could just get home, she would have been able to do something. She would have been able to help find her. So she's freaking out. She says she calls Jessica's phone, calls and texts her about 100 times and gets no response. So she books the first flight back home. So once Jessica had been missing for 4 hours, that's when Micah, her husband, called and reported her missing. And as soon as he did, police put out like a I don't think it was a bolo, but it was essentially a bolo where police in the area could be on the lookout, bolo, for Jessica, and this went out to a 50-mile radius all around the area for people to be watching for her. They searched hospitals in the area, and they found nothing, essentially. There was nobody who matched Jessica's description at any of the hospitals in a 50-mile radius to where she was reported missing. So police had actually been looking into Jessica's cell phone data because, hello, she, would have her cell phone on her. And when they were doing this, they found that her cell phone pinged in a location. So the policeman, Mr. Policeman, drove over to that location, and the location where it pinged was only a mile away from the childcare center where she works. So they were like, oh, this is a pretty good lead. So they go over and they're looking around, seeing what they can find. And this is when they see Jessica's car. Jessica had a white Subaru, I believe, and it was parked in the parking lot of a Dollar General. But Jessica was nowhere to be seen, so it looked like this car was just abandoned there. In finding the car, police do search it, and when they look inside the car, they find that there's some things inside that car that what in the world is that? Some things in the car that one might need if they were going to be going on a trip, going anywhere. That was her keys, her phone, and her purse. All of these were left abandoned inside her car. So they were like, I don't know if she left voluntarily, considering these are things that one might take if they were going to leave voluntarily. Police start canvassing the area after this, and this is when they find that there is a surveillance camera. And this surveillance camera nearby is pointed exactly at where Jessica's car was abandoned. So like, hell yeah, all we gotta do is, one, hope that these cameras are turned on because they're notoriously never are, or are never working. And two, just look at this footage to see the car pull in and see Jessica get in and abandon her car, or more likely that somebody else pulled Jessica's car into this parking lot and abandoned it. So they needed to look at this footage. So fortunately for everyone involved, the camera was recording, and they did get footage of Jessica's car pulling in. So they start to watch it, and they see it at about 1:15 p.m. Jessica's car pulls into the Dollar General parking lot. Somebody gets out of the car and then just proceeds to walk down an alley, leaving the car, just abandoning it. So they are like, cool, we need to look further into what she had been doing that day, because though the footage was helpful, they were able to see a time that somebody dropped off this car and walked off. The footage was so far away and it was so grainy that they couldn't actually see who had dropped Jessica's car off, but they were pretty sure it wasn't Jessica, because just by looking at like the height of the person next to the car, right, they were able to see that this person was a lot taller than Jessica actually was, that this person was closer to 6 feet tall. So they assumed the person driving was a man. So now that they're realizing that like Jessica hasn't ran off by herself, she was likely, they're assuming that she has been forcibly removed from the situation. So people start searching for her, and Jessica was so loved, dude, that like thousands of people in the community started looking for her. It like blew her family's mind a little bit because they didn't realize how many lives she had actually touched and how many people would care. And her husband said of this, and I quote, "Through the darkest times, you are able to see there are good people out there. That's pretty much the only thing that kept us from completely falling apart." After Jessica went missing, the family created a Facebook page for people to follow for updates and like where searches would be and things like that. And this page quickly got 5,000 followers, and they started a GoFundMe account that quickly raised $20,000. And all of that's great, right? Like the support from the community, vital. The money to aid in the searches, helpful. But as each day went on and there was no new leads, there was no sign of her, it was just like destroying her family. Her mother was like falling apart, and her mother and her stepfather were like really leaning on each other, and Greg would tell her mother like, don't worry, like we'll find her, we'll figure this out. But as each day went on and there were no new leads, this seemed to be farther and farther from the truth. A missing persons flyer was created, and Jessica was described as being between 5'2" and 5'4", depending on what report you see, and 130 pounds. And she was last seen wearing a black hooded sweatshirt with the Duck Duck Goose staff logo printed on it, and gray sweatpants with a white stripe down the side. So for 5 days, her family, her friends, numerous volunteers all desperately searched for her. They searched the 7-acre property that her mother and stepfather owned, and they found nothing. Police at this point are like, okay, we really need to retrace her steps because we're not coming up with anything. So they're like, okay, she was going to her mother and stepfather's house, or at least that's where she says she was going. So this is where we have to start. So they head there first. So police get there and they question her stepfather, Gregory. And Gregory tells them like he hadn't seen her. He didn't even know that she was planning on coming by that day. that during the time that she was supposedly coming by, he wasn't even in the house. He had been out of the house that day doing business, but it's possible that she could have come by and he just didn't know because she did have her own key to the house. But when police tell him like what her reasoning for going there was, like to send the fax, he was like, well, that's really fucking weird because like our fax machine has been on the fritz lately. Jessica knew that, so she wouldn't, excuse me, so she wouldn't have even been able to use ours if she wanted to. So it's at this point that they ask her stepfather about Jessica's personal life, her relationships, the relationship she had with her husband. And this is when her stepfather was kind of like, well, Jessica's kind of a loser magnet. And they were like, that's interesting. And this is when he tells them that like, he doesn't like Micah. He doesn't think that Micah is a very good guy. And this is definitely making the police's ears perk up because they were already sort of suspecting Micah because hello, it's always the husband, right? Men always do like to be murdering their wives. So at this point, they're like, okay, we need to go talk to Micah. So they go over, drive their little police cars over to Micah's house, and they start talking to him. And they're like, hey, tell us about the last morning that you saw Jessica, the day that she went missing. Micah tells police that he woke up early that morning, got ready, and left the house before Jessica had even gotten up with the kids to get ready, and that he had actually gotten a ride to work that day with a friend. So he didn't have his vehicle even with him that day, so he couldn't have come back and met up with Jessica later in the day. And they were like, that's interesting. But they're noting while they're talking to him that he's a tall dude, probably close to 6 feet tall. And they're thinking about that video surveillance footage that they had seen of a 6 foot tall man being likely the person who drove Jessica's car that day. So like, okay, cool. We're gonna really look into that and make sure that you're telling the truth and confirm that alibi because we're still kind of on the fence about how we feel about you. So for the next few days, police continue retracing Jessica's steps to try to figure out what might have happened to her. And they actually drive the route that Jessica would have taken if she had actually gone to her parents' house like she said she was going to. Because right now, they don't even know for sure she went there. Because should she have been going there? Yes, it's where she said she was going, but they didn't have anything that showed that she actually went there, arrived there, anything like that. So they drive the route that Jessica would have taken that day, and while they're doing that, they're actually going into businesses along the route and trying to get surveillance footage that they may have had so that they can kind of confirm that she had taken this route, see where she may have gone, see if she actually even went to her parents' home, and if she did, see what went wrong and where. Like where did she go missing? That's what I'm trying to say. English is hard, but you get what I'm saying. So they do end up finding some footage that is useful. They're watching this footage and they see Jessica. They see her car leave the area of her work and drive towards her parents' home. And the car's driving pretty normally, everything's fine. They're watching it, and then a couple of minutes later, they see the car head back in the opposite direction away from her parents' home. And this time the car is driving differently. This time the car's like really moving. The car is driving incredibly fast. It's driving erratically. It even goes and cuts through like a gas station parking lot to get to what appears it was doing was trying to get somewhere very, very quickly, right? Which I don't really think driving through a gas station parking lot is indicative of somebody, well, it is of somebody being in a hurry, but maybe not like in like a strange hurry because like I do know some people who do be driving through parking lots when they don't want to wait at a light. But either way, police are watching this and they see the difference in the driving style, and it's so different than the way the car had been driving when it was headed towards her parents' house that at this point they think that she was not the person driving the car, which adds up with them, seeing somebody who is 6 feet tall getting out of her car at the Dollar General. So they're like, okay, we're really onto something with it not being Jessica driving the car. Is essentially what they were getting at. They were like, okay, our theory is correct. We are geniuses. Look at us. We are so smart. I don't know if that's really what they were doing, but like, I doubt that that's a exact quote, but maybe if it is, who knows? I don't know them. You don't know them. So police at this point decide they need to go back to that original tape, that videotape of Jessica's car being abandoned at the Dollar General, where the person then just walked down the alley. Because at this point they're like, clearly this isn't Jessica driving. So who is it? Who is the person who dropped off her car? So they start watching this footage a little bit more closely. This time, they notice something new. Okay? How they didn't see this the first time, I don't know. It's just like that Skylar and East case where like they didn't realize that Skylar's friends had never come and picked her up, and the only vehicle that was ever there was the killer's car. And hello, it was her friends. But anyway, they watch it, and this is when they realize that less than a minute after Jessica's car is left in the Dollar General parking lot and the person walks down the alley, another vehicle comes into frame, coming from the direction that the person had just walked. Okay? And this was a pickup truck. And when they're watching it and they see this pickup truck, they're like, oh shit, I recognize that particular vehicle. Now, this is where I'm going to stop for a minute. I'm going to stop and I'm going to give you the opportunity to leave your guess down below on who that pickup truck belonged to. Don't cheat. Pause the video and do it. Don't cheat. Don't be a cheater. That's not cool. I'm not your real mom, so I can't really tell you what to do, but I am a mom, so I am going to tell you what to do. So pause the video and leave your guess down below. Who did the pickup truck belong to? If you said Jessica's husband, Micah, I'm so sorry, you're wrong. He was just a really nice guy who was traumatized upon learning what had happened to his wife. The pickup truck belonged to Jessica's stepfather, Gregory Graff. Okay, so apparently the day that Jessica went missing, her stepfather, Gregory Graff, had been calling her over and over because he needed help with like an Excel computer program, something. He needed help with something on the computer, right? And Jessica needed to go over there anyway because she needed to fax that paperwork because the fax machine at her work was like on the fritz. So she was like, oh, I can use my stepdad's fax machine. And he needs help anyway, so I'm going to go on over and help him. And apparently that morning, that afternoon, that day, morning, afternoon, day, hotel, motel, holiday. And apparently that day, he had been calling her over and over. Her phone was described as ringing nonstop. Several of her coworkers said this. So Jessica's coworker Shannon, upon seeing how many phone calls she was getting and knowing that she needed to go over anyway, gave Jessica permission to run over and send this fax. She was like, okay, let's like do whatever we gotta do to get your phone to stop ringing because my God, you're at work. Like, what's up, bro? So she gives her permission and Jessica goes. And then what ends up happened. And this realization for Shannon, that she had given her permission to go and essentially meet her demise was like really traumatizing for her, I think, because like when she was on the stand giving her testimony, she like broke down pretty hard. She was crying so bad that the judge like stopped everything and made the jury leave the room so that she could like get herself together. And clearly Shannon did not like Gregory Graff because at trial, like during the trial, she asked the judge, like, can you get him to stop looking at me? And the judge ended up asking her like she was asked during the trial if Jessica had any reason to fear Gregory. And she was just like, am I allowed to curse? So clearly she had some thoughts about this man. And this question, by the way, never actually got answered at the trial. I believe based on what we find out happened to Jessica, she definitely had a reason to fear this man. When we get into what happened, it's horrific, like truly, like trigger warning, like for all the gross and the ick and the what. But apparently when this question was asked, like whether or not Jessica should fear Greg, the attorneys like had a sidebar. Like, I object, don't answer that. Had a sidebar and discussed it, and it was determined with the judge that this question wouldn't even be answered. So, Your Honor, I object. Why? Because it's devastating for my case. Overruled. Good call. Name that movie. So now let's go back to the investigation, back to before police had all the details on what had happened to Jessica. So Jessica leaves work to go do her little fax. Now we have that bit of information. Now we have a bit more information because now we see Greg's vehicle being in the area that Jessica's vehicle was with no real reason as to why he should have been there unless there was like a big fucking coincidence. And on top of that, they now have evidence that Greg, who said hadn't heard from her, hadn't seen her, had no idea, nothing. That day, me and Jessica were strangers. Now they find out that he had been calling her over and over, so he had lied. So, police go to Greg so that they can question him about the footage of his truck being in the area and to explain why it was there. He said that that day he had dropped his truck off at a garage for some maintenance. The car needed some work done. The truck needed some work done. And that later that day, a friend of his had driven him over to pick up his truck from the maintenance place from where the truck was, right? Friend dropped him off. He went, he got his truck. After he picked up his truck, he went and he stopped at a gas station to pick up some food to eat, which was something that he frequently did when his wife was away because, you know, men can't take care of themselves apparently. And then after that, he went home and went about his business, and there was no sign Jessica had been there. It was just like a humongous coincidence that he happened to be in the same area that Jessica's vehicle was dropped off by a 6-foot-tall man, presumably, when he happened to be a 6-foot-tall man. He said that once he got home, some of his employees were stopping by throughout the afternoon to pick up their paychecks because, again, he ran a business. And the employees were questioned about this, and it was found that it was true. There were employees in and out of that house all throughout the afternoon when Jessica went missing, picking up their paychecks, and they hadn't seen anything. So police are like, okay, that's a very solid story. Let's go and try to dissect that and see how much of that is true. So they start with the garage where he says he dropped off his vehicle to get serviced. And when they check with the garage is like, no, we did not have an appointment with that man on that day. I don't know what he is talking about. And they're like, oh, that's really interesting because he said that he definitely dropped off his truck here to be worked on. So they're like, okay, that's one lie. Then they go and they check the surveillance camera from the gas station where he said that he had gone and gotten food and all that jazz. And they watch the footage. And they do see him going to the gas station, but they see him just drive right on past it. He drove right on fucking past it. So like, lie number 2. Then they interview the friend, the lady that he said drove him to the appointment to pick up his car, all that jazz. Remember he said his friend dropped him off and all that? And she's like, why the fuck would he say that? Because that definitely did not happen. What the hell? Like, that's weird that he would even say that. So basically his whole story, as apart from his employees coming to pick up their paychecks, was all a lie. So now police are suspecting that Greg might have something to do with Jessica's disappearance. So they go to his wife, Jessica's mom, and they ask her for permission to search their home. And of course she gives them permission because she wants to help however she can to find out what happened to her daughter. I'm sure this probably was really difficult for her to know that I don't know if she knew that they were suspecting him or if they thought that, or she thought they just wanted to like search the house. But either way, she gives them permission. They start searching the house. And this is when they find that fax machine that Greg said wasn't working. So Jessica wouldn't have a reason to be there anyway. It was working. Not only was it working, but they checked the fax history because apparently fax machines log everything you do. Did not know that. I don't know much about fax machines actually. For transparency, but apparently they log everything you do. So they were able to see that a fax was sent right around 1 p.m. and it had Jessica's name on it. So they're like, what the hell? So police keep searching the house. And this is when they end up in the basement. In the basement, they find bloody tissues in a trash can. They're like, oh shit, we done did find some blood. But the amount of blood that's on the tissues in the trash can isn't enough to show that like a crime took place. It's definitely not enough to show that a murder took place. It's just like a little bit of blood on tissues in the trash can. But they're like, okay, though we don't have enough to show something happened, maybe we have enough to put a little scare into him to get him to say that something did happen. So they decide to question Greg, bring up the blood in the basement to his attention, all the inconsistencies, and see what he says. See if we can get him to confess, right? Like, make him think we have more than we have. All that jazz. You know, police things. Policing. So they go. And they question Greg on the blood in the basement. And he doesn't confess right away or anything. He decides at that moment, he's like, oh shit, I need a break. I need just a moment. I need to go have a cigarette. So Greg goes upstairs and an officer goes with him. And when they get in the room, the cop notices that there is a photo of Greg with a couple of dogs, like on his nightstand. Or like on a table, right? And he looks over at that picture and he's like, oh, those are some cute dogs, man. And I know that this sounds random, but I promise that this actually goes somewhere. There's a reason for me saying this, I promise. So he's like, those are some cute dogs. Like, that says a nice fish. Big fucking eyes. But a nice fucking fish. No. But he does. He's like, oh, those are some pretty cute dogs. And Greg responds with something that's very interesting. He's like, oh yeah, they're really cute or whatever. Too bad I'm not going to get to see them ever again. It's at this moment that the cop's like, oh shit, we got him. He's about to say something. The truth is about to come out. So they actually decide at this point that they're going to take him to the station to actually like formally question him, record everything, like make it real official. So they start leading him out. And while this is happening, mind you, Jessica's mom is there. She's in the house. She's watching this whole thing go down. Her husband, of many, many, many years, being taken in by police in relation to her daughter's disappearance. So they're leading him out and she's screaming at him, tell him everything you know, tell him everything you know, tell him the truth. And I guess he just looks at her and just simply says, I love you, as they're leading him out. And this is the last time that she saw him before his trial. So his wife, Jessica's mom, tells him, tell police the truth, tell police everything. And once at the station, he does just that. He tells them everything he did. And when I tell you, oh my fucking God, like, there's a lot to this, so be prepared. Okay. He says that he and Jessica had pre-planned for her to come to his house to send out this fax. So he says that she came over that day, that she sat down at his computer to like start doing something, right? She's doing the fax thing, she's doing the computer thing. And almost immediately upon her sitting down with her back to him, he goes, he retrieves a gun, and he just shoots her in the back of the head, killing her right then. Seemingly for no reason, but there was a reason, and it's a very disgusting and messed up reason. And we need to take a collective breath here before we get into it, because it is horrible, and we're going to get to it in just a second. He then took Jessica's body and drug it to a back bedroom where he left it while he went and drove her car to the Dollar General. He dropped off her car. He adjusted her seat so that it wouldn't look like he had been the one driving. He wanted it to seem like Jessica had been the one driving. And then he went and he walked to his truck that he already had waiting there because this entire thing was planned. He drove back to his home and then went about his day like normal with his coworkers, not his coworkers, his employees, coming to his house and picking up their paychecks, him acting totally normal while his stepdaughter was dead upstairs waiting for him. She wasn't waiting for him, but he had her waiting for him. It's just crazy, man, because all this time police are looking for her, and she literally died the day she went missing, which was just a few weeks shy of her 34th birthday, which is just so messed up. And so police now know this. They're hearing him say all this, and initially they're wondering if a sexual assault had taken place, and if it had taken place, when it took place, before. Like, he's saying that he killed her, but they're wondering if he assaulted her before, during, or after that. And that's when they found out about the videotape. Now, this part is horrifying. It's going to be a lot to hear. It's fucking gross. This guy is so gross. So just a heads up that from here on, this portion is going to be a lot. Once Greg's workers were gone for the day, Greg went upstairs to where he had left Jessica's body. He set up 2 video cameras and filmed himself sexually abusing her body. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what he did because it's disgusting and it doesn't matter. And later in the video, from context clues, you can kind of put it together based on the evidence that was shown at trial. But that's what he did. And so the cops are hearing this. They're knowing about this tape. And I can only imagine that they're just like sitting in stunned silence staring at this gross motherfucker, right? Just like quiet enough for a pin to drop. And this is when they look at him and they're like, so, you're telling me that you murdered your stepdaughter, who you've known half of her fucking life, simply so that you could have sex with her dead body? And he was just like, yeah. He then tells police where they can find her body. He drew them a map to make it easy to uncover her. And he had buried her on his property behind a shed. So police went out to retrieve her body, and they're out there and it's snowing at the time, and they're like out there with shovels and rakes trying to uncover her, trying to uncover the worst possible thing that you could ever find, right? And so they're doing this, and they finally come upon a bloody comforter, and inside of the comforter was Jessica's body. He had literally just taken her body, put it in a comforter, tied it up with rope, and buried it on his property, the property that he shared with her own mother, dude. Like, ugh. After killing Jessica, Greg just went on to act totally normal, nothing out of the ordinary. Well, except for when he was seen on camera later, because, you know, now they're getting all this footage of him, and they see him on camera at Ace Hardware store buying a bunch of different cleaners, things to clean up the blood, Jessica's blood, out of his carpet. Him telling people that he was getting all this stuff to clean up dog piss. You, my friend, are the human equivalent of dog piss. Dog piss is too good for you, homie. Fuck this guy, man. Like, oh. He told police that he couldn't sleep well the night of the murder, which, good. So he said he got up at about 4:30 a.m. and cleaned everything in the house about 50 times. He then went on to comfort his wife, Jessica's mother, telling her how everything would be okay, how they would find her, not to worry, no big deal. And he participated in the searches on his property, but making sure to steer people away from the area near the shed where he had actually hid Jessica's body. His daughter, her name was Heather. Apparently she came down from wherever she lived to take part in the searches, and she remembers that she was going to go search near the shed, and her dad was like, oh no, her biological father, as she calls him, was like, oh no, don't, not there, definitely not there. Whatever you do, don't look there, because I already searched there, and she's definitely not there. And she remembers that during that conversation, he seemed worried, and at the time it didn't seem like it didn't stick out to her, but now knowing what he did and where she was, she realizes why he seemed so off. She said of his behavior during the search, and I quote, "He seemed worried. He didn't know where Jess was. He was crying. We hugged. He thanked me for coming." Her husband, his daughter's husband, also noted that during the searches, there was a point in time where there was a helicopter circling overhead, looking for Jessica above his property. And as the helicopter moved in closer to the area where Jessica was actually buried, Greg seemed super nervous and started asking about whether or not these helicopters might have infrared technology to try to find bodies. And again, this is one of those hindsight things where at the time it's oh yeah, I wonder if there's infrared. I wonder if they'll be able to find something. But now they're oh, he was wondering how close he was to getting caught. Once Jessica's body was recovered, the DA came out and held a press conference announcing this to the public. And he said specifically, and I quote, "Unfortunately, we have sad news to announce today. Jessica Padgett is deceased. She is the victim of a homicide." Her family also released a statement through the police. They didn't come out themselves. The police released it on their behalf. And they basically just thanked the police, thanked the media, and thanked the public for all of their help in trying to find Jessica. They said of Jessica's murder in the statement, and I quote, "We are devastated by the loss of Jessica. She was a beautiful, vibrant young woman who was beloved by her family and friends. The world shines less bright today." So clearly, Greg was arrested, charged with first-degree murder, and held without bail in a Philadelphia area prison while he awaited trial. A week after Jessica was murdered, on December 3rd, 2014, hundreds of people lined up outside the funeral home to remember a mother they said could light up a room with just a smile. About 400 people actually attended the funeral, a funeral so large that it required two rooms to hold all the people, and the rooms were filled with photos of Jessica and flowers, and Jessica had been cremated and her urn was placed on a table surrounded by these photographs and flowers. During the funeral, a pamphlet was passed out, obviously, as they always are, and in this pamphlet there was a quote from Jessica's husband, Micah, and it simply said, quote, "Jess, you will always be my forever." Jessica's sister Christy said of the funeral, and I quote, "I'm just overwhelmed. I didn't know half of the people that showed up, but they all knew Jess and loved her. I think she's smiling down from heaven at all the friends she's made over the years." The amount of people that showed up for Jessica just blew her family's minds. Apparently during the funeral, and after the funeral, 4 hours after the funeral was over, there were still people trickling in and out of her funeral service, to pay their respects. So they were just amazed by how many lives she touched. So initially, Greg did try to lie to his wife about what had happened to Jessica, because obviously he would do that. Who would want to admit to something like that? That's just so gross, especially just because of how long he and Jessica's mom had been together. They had been together for 22 years and they had been married for 17, which means that he knew Jessica her entire life, man, which adds a whole new level of fucked up to this case, honestly. And it's already so messed up, but you add that he's known her since she was a kid and that he did this, and it's just, and it's just so sad for her. I can't even imagine being Jessica's mom. She said that the same man who consoled her while her daughter was missing, who participated in the searches, who told her not to worry, who held her and cuddled her and tried to make her feel okay, was also the same man who was misdirecting her at every turn when new evidence showed up in the case. She said at first he denied that she'd ever been at the house, and then he told her that actually he did come home that day and he found Jessica's car in the driveway and blood inside the house, so he panicked and moved her car because he was afraid that the police would suspect him, even though Jessica was actually in some trouble because she knew some dangerous people who she owed money to, or so that's what he was telling her mother. Eventually, though, he did confess that he had actually murdered her daughter, and I oh my God, I cannot even imagine what learning that was like for her. To find out he did it and then to find out why he did it, that's so much for a person to bear. And then to know that you had like been married to this man, you had shared a bed with this person, and that essentially you had given this man access to your daughter, like not knowing this was going to happen. This was just your husband, but I can't imagine the guilt in that. And she shouldn't have guilt. It's absolutely not her fault. But that's just how people are. I can't even imagine what that feels like for her. Truly and disrespectfully, fuck this guy. Danielle, Jessica's mother, did file for divorce once her husband was arrested, obviously, and her court paperwork said that her husband's actions have made her, quote, condition intolerable and life burdensome. The understatement of the century. And on top of all this hell that he's already putting her through, she had to actually go to the court and get permission, like get a request, like put in a request to a judge that Greg not be able to like move their money or their assets, not touch their shit, because she found out once he was arrested that most of their assets were in his name, and after he was arrested, he had already taken out $60,000 of their shared money. And I'm assuming this was for his defense, but still, she's like, can you please order him to not touch our shit, because like it's both of our things, and now I'm going through all of this and I have to deal with my daughter being dead and now him touching all the money, and like just can you please like stop it? That'd be great, thanks. So initially, Greg did plan on pleading guilty, or so he said. He said that he didn't want to go through a trial. He didn't want to hire an attorney and go through that whole bullshit because he was guilty, and that he didn't want to put Danielle and her family through a trial and use like all of their money in order to do so, because it would basically be hurting them twice, right? But then he was like, you know what, actually, fuck all that noise. I'm going to get an attorney and I'm going to try to fight this. Initially, his attorney was going to try and go for an insanity defense because, of course he did. He filed a notice that basically outlined all the different mental health defenses there were available to him, and he was really throwing it all at the wall to see what stuck. Insanity, diminished capacity, and guilty but mentally ill. He said that this was clearly a breakdown because it was grossly uncharacteristic of his client. His attorney said of this specifically, and I quote, "When you see a guy who has no history like this, and he's a good guy normally, and then something like this happens, there's some sort of breakdown there. That has to be examined. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I don't think the defendant saw this coming." The DA said of this, and I quote, "We believe Mr. Graff was acting intentionally and knowingly. That he wasn't clouded by any mental illness that made him unable to know the quality and nature of his acts." In the end, it was determined that Greg did not have diminished capacity, so this whole defense was a no-go. So since this wasn't going to be possible, his attorney's like, well, I guess we need to instead show that this was not like a planned murder. So he tried to spin it that this was a spontaneous, unplanned crime, something that just randomly happened, and that because of that it should be third-degree murder and not first-degree murder, because no one in the right mind would plan to murder somebody and do what he did and then have people, his employees, coming and picking up their paychecks throughout the day. That's just simply not something a normal person would do. And he said specifically of this, and I quote, "He's not a complete moron." Sure. The prosecutors disagreed with this, however. Not with like him not being a moron. I mean, maybe with him not being a moron, but with him, whether or not this was planned. They said that they did believe this was planned, but that they just didn't think he believed he would get caught. They didn't think that he believed that they'd find the blood that soaked through his mattress and carpets, that he didn't think that they would find footage of him hiding Jessica's car, and that he didn't think that police would find footage of him at a sex shop before the murder happened, buying various toys. The prosecution said of Greg and criminals in general, and I quote, "The good thing about criminals is they're not rocket scientists. They make mistakes." And it's so sad, dude, because during the trial, each of these sex toys was taken out and shown to the jury. They were taken out of plastic bags and like passed around for everybody to look at while it was described how they were used and all that. And I guess, fortunately, by this point, Jessica's mom had already left the courtroom. There were certain parts where like family members would leave because they didn't want to know all of that jazz. So she didn't have to see the items and then hear how they were used on her child. Her husband, though, Micah, did not leave during this time. And I guess while each of the pieces of evidence were shown, he just like put his head down in his hands. What else could you do? And this was when they showed like the toys, the video equipment he used to film it, the bloody items, things like that. During the trial, Greg's confession was also played. It was 39 whole minutes of him just describing exactly what he did. And I guess it was very, like, monotone. There was no inflection in his voice. He was just talking as casually as he could tell you anything. But he was talking about, you know, the fucking worst thing in the entire world that a person could do. It's so weird. Whenever you hear about these confessions, people are always, like, talking so casually. It's so gross. Like, I don't know, it's just a special type of person who can do these type of things in the first place and then to, like, have no feeling about it whatsoever. It's just very odd. But with that said, I guess it's good that we can't understand that mindset, because a person who could understand that mindset is probably somebody who may be a little bit of a messed up person, right? So I guess that's a good thing for us that we don't get it. Greg just basically said that due to, quote, a crazy thought in the back of his head, he shot Jessica in the back of hers and then tried to have sex with her body, but that his mind was all spinning and everything was a blur. He said of this in an interview, and I quote, "I just lost it and I was scared. There was blood everywhere. Blood everywhere. Just a fucking mess." He then went on to talk about how he watches porn all the time and he thinks about sex often, and he said specifically of this, and I quote, "I think about sex a lot, but I don't ever hurt anybody. I think I just fucking snapped." And, like, he's just super bummed out about what he did because he's lost everything because of it. He's lost his life. He's lost his wife. He's lost his house in Florida. He's lost his friends, his business, his family. He didn't mention losing his stepdaughter, Jessica, who he's known his entire life that he murdered, but okay. He just said that he wished he could have gotten help. Now, what's super fucked up about this case, which I've said now 100 times because everything about this case is so fucked up, is that the jury had to watch the videos that he made. Because remember, this fuck set up 2 cameras to record what he did. Apparently it was 6 minutes worth of videos. That was a bunch of shorts, like, combined together to make one video. And the jury had to watch this. And it showed, like, the camera panning in and out, zooming in on different parts of Jessica's body. And in some of these it showed a plastic bag over her head. And in all the clips, Greg was trying to achieve sexual gratification. Greg's attorney tried to object to this video being admitted in the first place because he said that they weren't denying that he had, quote, abused the corpse, that they had admitted that he had done that. So the video wasn't necessary to be shown, but the prosecution believed that it was necessary to be shown because they needed to show what an absolute monster this man was in order to get their first-degree murder conviction, and the judge agreed that they could show it. And in response to this, Greg's attorney had, like, a little bit of a pity party. He, like, sat there with his arms folded, looking down, just, like, in, you know, disapproval of this decision. And his client sat beside him and just stared down at the table the whole time while the videotape was shown, and neither of them watched it. So 6 jurors and 4 alternates spent 6 minutes, which I can only imagine is the longest 6 minutes of their lives, watching this video. And I guess they were just fucked by this. Like, the judge told them they didn't need to watch the entire video, that they just, you know, needed to watch part of it. So they did. They watched it. Some did look away from time to time, obviously, but continued to watch it because that was what they were there to do. They were just shocked and repulsed. By the end of it, some of them were crying. Like, it was a lot for anyone to watch. I can only imagine. Like, I can't imagine being on this jury. It sounds like hell on earth. The jury foreman said that this was the hardest thing that he ever had to do, and that he will never forget it, but if he could go back in time, he would do it all over again because justice needed to be served here. Unfortunately, this video wasn't shown to the entire courtroom. I can't even imagine if it would have been. That would have been so messed up. It was projected, like, in the back of the courtroom for the people who needed to see it. The judge didn't even watch it. Like, it was a gnarly video, dude, as I'm sure you can imagine. So fortunately, her family and the people in the courtroom didn't need to watch it, didn't have to watch it. But even though they weren't going to be seeing it, a lot of her family opted to going out and sitting in the hallway, so they didn't have the chance of hearing anything. And just so you know, her mother was one of those people who went and sat outside. She didn't have to hear or see any of this, because I cannot even imagine. The DA said of showing this video to the jury, and I quote, "It wasn't pleasant. It wasn't tasteful, but we needed to show you what he did. So another wild thing about this case, this isn't a fucked up thing, it's just a wild thing, is that, okay, so after closing arguments, the jury went into the deliberation room to deliberate. And after only 6 minutes in a first-degree murder trial, they came back with their decision. The jury had found Gregory Graff guilty of first-degree murder for killing his stepdaughter and sexually abusing her corpse. The judge immediately sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, the maximum punishment faced according to state law. He was also given a 2-year sentence for abusing her corpse, the maximum for a misdemeanor offense. The sentence will run consecutively to the life sentence for murder, and the verdict was met with hugs and tears. 2 years for what he did to her body because it's considered a misdemeanor. What? The judge said, quote, "This is a crime against human nature." Apparently, when the jurors went into the deliberation room, basically the foreman was just kind of like, so who here thinks that Gregory Graff should be found guilty of first-degree murder? And immediately everybody's arms shot up. He said that basically it took longer to sign the papers than it did to actually come up with their decision. At the end of this trial, the judge was basically like, listen, I can go home at the end of this day, and I can try to put the details of what happened in this case out of my mind and try to forget everything I've heard. But her family can't. Her family will have to deal with this for the rest of their lives. And I can't imagine that. Knowing what they know, seeing what they've seen, hearing what they've heard, I don't know how one deals with that. Jessica's sister Christy addressed Greg specifically in the court, saying, and I quote, "I hope she haunts you for the rest of your life. I hope you fear for your life every day and feel some sort of remorse one day. And that day, when you meet your maker and are banished to hell for eternity, I hope maybe then you'll know what you took from us and how we felt that day. You only cared about your few minutes of sex, not her 33 years of life. You didn't care about the family she had or the thousands of friends or the entire community you shattered when you took her." That is some powerful sister shit if I ever heard some powerful sister shit. And during all of this, she noticed that Greg was crying, and she added at that point, and I quote, "You're pretty good at faking it. What I've learned from this trial is that even now, you don't regret it. You don't even care. You could have just taken your punishment, but you decided to take us through this excruciating trial, making us relive the nightmare." The judge asked him if he had anything to say, and he was just like, "No, I'm just very sorry." Jessica's husband Micah said after the verdict, "It's been tough moving on without the only woman he ever loved and raising 3 children on his own," and he said that Jessica was the most wonderful person you'd ever meet. So they wanted to get the death penalty for Greg, right? But apparently there weren't any aggravating factors in this case that would make it so the death penalty could be on the table. Because apparently killing her specifically so he could have sex with her body was not enough legally. But because of the push of Jessica's sister, a local legislator is pushing a new law that would make sexual abuse of a corpse a factor that would allow prosecutors to pursue the death penalty. And Jessica's sister, Christy, has said, like, essentially, they know that this isn't going to bring Jessica back. Duh, like, obviously. But that maybe by having this as an aggravating factor, it could stop some of these other nasty fucks from doing things like this, or get those nasty fucks who do things like this the death penalty. Apparently the state rep who's been working on Jessica's law, which is what it would be called, has said that she still gets the chills and the creeps when she talks about this particular case, because where it took place was right across the street from her legislative. That's not right. Well, right across the street from her office. So Jessica's husband, Michael, filed a lawsuit against Gregory. The suit essentially says that Gregory's crime inflicted severe emotional distress upon her kids, and it accused him of, quote, "extreme and outrageous conduct which goes beyond all possible bounds of decency and which is atrocious and utterly intolerable in a civilized society," which, yeah. Michael was looking for funeral expenses for his wife, compensation for her lost wages and retirement benefits, and punitive damages. It also said that Greg should pay for him and his family's counseling that they're going to need to deal with knowing what happened to Jessica. And I didn't see if this suit was successful. I found nothing on it, but I really hope it was, because I do think he should be entitled to all of that. I do, however, wonder like how he would pay it, if it would come out of Jessica's mother's money or if he has his own funds. I'm not really sure. I just hope that something happened there. And I hope him and his family are getting the counseling they need, because I cannot imagine knowing that that happened to your wife or your mother. Like, that's just a lot for any person. In November of 2015, a year after Jessica was murdered, Jessica Padgett's family dedicated a bench in her honor in the Riverwalk Park on Front Street in Whitehall Township. And this was a park where she often took her children. This, as I'm sure you can imagine, has been incredibly hard on Jessica's family. Like, honestly, how could it not be? Apparently Jessica's mom, Danielle, said that Jessica was her best friend and that in times of trouble she would lean on Jessica for support. So now that she's going through the worst possible thing that she could ever go through, the one person that could help her get through it, that always would help her get through it, is the one person who's not there to do so. Which is just so rough. Her sister Christy also says that she's lost without her, and she said specifically of this, and I quote, "Sometimes it feels like it happened yesterday. Sometimes it feels like it's been forever since I've had my sister. I still miss her." Now, if all of this wasn't bad enough, which, oh my God, it clearly is, Gregory Graff tried to appeal his conviction. I shit you not, dude. Greg claimed in this appeal that at the time of the murder, he was high on weed, mushrooms, and alcohol, and that Jessica had come over, and they had gotten into a pretty serious argument, obviously a very quick one since she was murdered within minutes upon arriving at his house, and that he had then killed her in a fit of rage. He said the old tried and true, "I blacked out and had no idea what I was doing." And apparently this was substantiated, quote unquote, by a prior 1995 arrest he had for possession and intent to deliver, because he had 10 pounds of weed on him. And this clearly demonstrates that he'd have the ability to do what he did, because didn't you know that weed makes you a violent, murdering necrophile? Like, that's just what weed does, no? Like, that's one of the symptoms of smoking the ganja. Greg, you are dumb. You are really, really dumb. In response to this appeal, the DA was like, "But you told us before that you had this crazy feeling in your body, sexual in nature, that caused you to do what you did. That's very different than what you're saying now." And Greg just tried to, reason this away, saying that his attorney failed to represent him properly and that he paid him $60,000 just for him to not even call any defense witnesses. And because of all of this, he wanted a new trial. Now, fortunately, Greg got his whole head out of his whole ass, and he ended up withdrawing this appeal, saying that it was, quote, "the right thing to do." But the DA was kind of like, this guy's not stupid. He knew he wasn't going to get away with this, which obviously he wasn't. That reasoning was just stupid. So he withdrew this appeal. And now that I've said all the things that one could say about this case, I want to end this with a quote from Greg himself, the man of the disgusting fucking out. He said of himself and Jessica's murder, and I quote, "I'm not really a bad guy. I just lost my mind." And with that quote, that, my friends, is the story of the horrifying murder of Jessica Padgett. I have simultaneously no words and all the words, and also so many questions. First of all, how dare you? But no, first of all, what the fuck? I don't think that I've ever covered the case of a necrophile, and I am in awe, in a bad way, that this is a thing and that somebody would do this. It's so gross and apparently not super common, thankfully. Apparently necrophiles in general are pretty good at keeping their impulses under control, those who do exist. And if they do end up losing control and leaving the fantasy world and going into the real world, they very seldomly actually kill somebody to satisfy these needs, because there are other options. And because this guy, Greg, went all these years, he was in his 50s and he had no record of doing anything even fucking close to this that he was caught for, I guess, it's theorized that something must have disrupted his ability to keep those desires in check. And because he had fantasized about it, probably for decades, he was mentally prepared to actually commit the murder when the time came, because he had essentially rehearsed it in his mind for years. I truly do not understand how he could do this, how he could know Jessica for like 20 years, to watch her grow from a kid to a teen to an adult to a wife to a mother, and then shoot her in the back of the head and do what he did. That is horrifying. That is so scary to think that he had no warning signs. No one knew this would come. Nobody knew he was a weirdo. No one knew that beneath the surface was all this dark shit, and that just one day he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna kill her and do it. Like, it's just gonna happen right now. Like, what the fuck? That's so scary. Now, this is the part of the video where I would normally ask you the question of the day, but honestly, I don't even think I have one. My mind is like, my mind is a jelly. Well, actually, no, I do. I have one. Do you think this was premeditated, or do you think he actually did snap? Please leave your answer down below, because I personally think this was premeditated. Him calling her to the house, him having his truck waiting at the Dollar General where he left her car, him going the day before to buy those sex toys. I cannot see a scenario in which this was not premeditated, personally, but let me know down below what you think. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope you found it informative and interesting, and it gave you all the information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, thank you for remembering Jessica Padgett with me today. What happened to her is so horrible. I feel so bad for her. I'm thankful that at least, like, she didn't even see this coming. You know what I mean? Like, there's one silver lining in a fucked up fucking cloud of bullshit. But for her family, dude, I feel so bad for her family and her friends, anyone who loved her, to not only lose her, but to lose her to murder. And then to find out that the person who did it was somebody who's been in your life and in your family for years. And then to find out the way he totally disrespected her and her body like that after the fact. That is so much for people to live with. I can't imagine it. I'm so sorry that they have to go through that. And truly, from the bottom of my heart, fuck Greg Graff. Truly, 100%, disrespectfully, fuck Greg Graff. But anyways, please let me know down below of any cases you'd like to see me cover in the future. As this case shows, if you leave me a suggestion, I will try to cover it. Because I know that you guys suggest a lot of really interesting cases that really need more light shined on them. I've never seen anybody cover this one. I looked it up. No videos on it. I could find nothing, so I wanted to bring this to you guys because it's absolutely crazy. Nicole, thank you for bringing it to my attention. I hope that I did it some sort of justice here. And I like to look into the cases that you guys suggest because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste. Otherwise, you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new video every week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is linked down below. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I do be on those platforms. And I also have a link to my merch store. This is not my merch. This is actually Kendall Ray's merch. 100% of the proceeds from this shirt go to the missing and exploited children. So you should go buy one. Because then you get a shirt and you get to do a donation, and that's pretty sick. That's pretty much it. All the makeup, earrings, obviously. Thank you. One more thank you to Ana Luisa Jewelry for partnering with me today. If you want, this will be linked down below. These, everything's going to be down below for your convenience is the point. And now with all of that said, I want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday. At the very least, be better than Greg Graff. And I'm gonna go hang out with my baby who's crying in the room with my husband waiting to get all the kisses. So I hope to see you in my next video. Yeah, that's pretty much it.